Apartment 1.
A collection of poems.
By Vichet Chum. Apartment 21. Inside these walls of this itty-bitty box live a man with a laptop, a man with a typewriter, a gal named Lou, and a piano named Therese. Each creature goes about their way, sitting in that chair and then moving to that one, laying on the planks and resigning to the bed where only the man and the other man are permitted to relent. But the four-legged Lou disobeys anyways. The law and order of the itty-bitty box and the piano named Therese can only move at the instruction of the other man with the typewriter, which raises the question, what would a piano being doing in a bed anyways? Nah, Therese finds solace in her corner. Sometimes the windows go up, sometimes they go down, and sometimes the creatures go round and round looking for direction. The man taps, the other man types, Lucy barks, and Therese, at the instruction of the other man, goes clunk clunk. But sometimes it goes, oh my goodness, that was beautiful. How lucky we are to be alive. Inside these walls of this itty-bitty box live a man with a laptop, a man with a typewriter, a gal named Lou, and a piano named Therese. The creatures go round and round learning the details of this itty-bitty box inside these walls where music is sometimes made in Therese's corner. How lucky we are to be alive.
To be Asian. To be Asian sometimes feels to be invisible, as if you're not enough of consequence to matter, but nice enough to cherish, hold, and even elevate. To say, see, look at what this one did. And the complexity of human instinct or desire is not yours for investigating, holding, examining, being. How could you possibly see that much through those shark-like eyes? But the simplicity of submission is to beat you to the punchline, to decide how you function, feel, fumble through the follies of life until you're weaponized to counter for political morality as if that was a thing. And you're forced into submission like the countries you came from, as if politics were only a matter of the brain and not a matter of the heart and a matter of the body that has sustained injury after injury after injury after injury. As if the injury felt nostalgic, but in actuality was omnipresent, because they thought you might not say something. So your bruises are buried underneath, bellowing inside. The injury of imperialism remains skin deep, always and forever. To be Asian sometimes feels to be invisible, but also to be Asian is to be gigantic. Huge in your audacity, to be brimming with no fucks left because they'll see what they want to see and you'll do what you want to do. Because to be Asian sometimes, all the times, it feels enormous.
At the front. At the front, I tuck my shirt tails in, tighten my tie just enough to give me passage of breath for an 8-hour shift. I'd go through my list, check in the guests, check out the guests, process payments, smile and wave, position and polish, fluff and flounder, answer questions of connectivity or lack thereof, wash, rinse, and repeat. But then, when it tipped, past the tipping hour, the murky moment, after too late, before too early, the moment in which the front became a runway for New York City's most daring derelicts That's when the real show began. The bleach blonde woman in a tightly bound dress with a perilous stare, but a tight-lipped reason and patience for a friend who she was waiting for, who never showed up. So she left anyways. And moments after, someone called to ask if that bleach blonde woman with a perilous stare was still there, but she wasn't. And so, a deal rendered incomplete. Or that Aussie wedding guest who did a double take when he trotted downstairs en route out to do a little more drinking. He stopped and stared and asked me a question about who I was, where I was, and what sort of drinking I liked to do. And I blushed because it was clear that in a lobby of invisibility, that sort of attention was audacious and desirous of something more than just conversation. That the temporary nature of this space could entice me to be reckless, which I wonder about. But from his side of the post and my side of the post was a gap too far to cross. Another deal rendered incomplete. Or the time of a full-on intervention, a baptism, exorcism occurred among 3-person party who were looking to use the restroom. But the alchemy of drinking, drugs, and dramatics combusted in a perfect public prayer that brought them to their knees with recitations that could have been tongues or tales or talents. And as they ascended from the lobby tiles, their focus returned to the task at hand. They pissed and pondered what their next move would be, but as far as I'm concerned, their deal was fully rendered. At the front, New York City's derelicts came and went, and with each revolving profile, a residue was left behind. Maybe it looked like the dust suddenly in the air after an explosion. Maybe it smelled like waking up to bacon and being alerted to hunger and to waking, or maybe it sounded like that part of the song that you think you know, but the words are all wrong, but the music was just right. Or maybe it felt like being in love for the first time when that person pressed up against your leg and you felt that impression, that sensation when you laid in bed at night. At the front, where you learned about love and education, a beautiful resuscitation, an exploration that rendered totally and entirely complete.
Murder. Not ghosts or goblins or witches or monsters or lurking or hiding or disguising or waiting, but when I was younger, the thing I feared the most was murder. Yes, murder, and not your in the dining room with the wrench of the cardboard game variety, but more of the being a child and a man coming up to you and slitting your throat variety. So, I struck deals, all kinds of deals. If I gave my brother my Lion King cards, if I gave my brother my Power Ranger cards, if I gave away all my cards, I could sleep on his bedroom floor. But sometimes, as I laid on the floor, the tightly taut carpet itching against my skin, I wondered why God has done this to me. Why has she put such fear in my heart? Was it because I watched way too much 2020, following the gruesome details of rich white people being killed, digesting each dramatization as if it were the truth, but covering my eyes only at knife's point? Or was it because my father recorded the killing fields onto one of his video camera tapes and kept it in his library among our vacations so that when we watched that genocide movie, it felt like watching our last jaunt to SeaWorld? I clutched my blanket with holes a little tighter, and I stared up at the popcorn ceiling. And in the dark, I tried to visualize every object in the room. The bottom of my brother's bed, the beige lamp that my mom refused to remove the plastic from, the entertainment center that had one too many compartments. I tried to outline each image so that if the man were to try and stab me or slit my sad child throat, I would be ready. So with one hand holding the blanket tight to my chest, I began on the right, down to the left, and then from the left down to the right, ear to ear, hip to hip, brain to crotch, brain to toes. I created a force field around me that only I could see, that would surely protect me from any men who tried to slit my throat. And in the pitch of the night, on the right, down to the left, and then from the left, down to the right, ear to ear, hip to hip, brain to crotch, brain to toes. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't die.
Heart. In the darkness, in the compact corridor, in the railway of my brother's apartment, I told him that I was in love. He shifted to one side, his silhouette looking menacing, emitting an energy that only brothers can convey, a complete mix of love and confusion, and expectation and surprise and doubt, and an ever imminent threat of total combustion. The lights hung low. I wouldn't dare look into his eyes because any exchange would bring me to my knees, though I was already on my knees, buried in the carpet, wringing my hands in the floor follicles, hoping it would absorb some of my breath. I told my brother that I was in love with a guy that I didn't know. I told my brother that it just happened, that maybe I was, or maybe I wasn't. No, maybe I was. And maybe I've held my cards so tight against my chest that if you were to peel away the skin and look at the bloody meat and matter, you see a heart that was breaking before it was beating, a heart that ached before it knew its purpose was to live. And my brother sighed deeply and heavily, and with such pause you could build an entire civilization within it. He shifted. I shifted. He shifted. I shifted. He said, okay. I said, yeah. And my brother sighed deeply and heavily. And I could hear him crack and say to me with such resignation to the sadness that had passed from our parents to him, to me, that he was sorry. He was sorry because he knew so well that it would be harder for me than it ever was for him. He was sorry because it would be hard. And the heart that knew breaking before beating, aching before life, that heart broke a little more.
When this is done, I'm gonna hug the shit out of you, okay? Okay. See you then.
Bah. Instead of allowances, he gave us Slurpees. Instead of cold, hard cash, he gave us options at the dollar store. Instead of home-cooked meals, he gave us buckets of chicken. This was a man who could not digest hamburgers, so he let us fill our plates with American dreams and schemes and a hunger that extended beyond dinner. When I was younger, I would comb through his photos. and see a different story. A man with aviators and fitted blouses and bell bottoms that protested that the 70s were strong and wrong. A man who was a friend among men, who hung around shopping malls and parked cars just to get a shot to capture the casual coolness of contemporary Cambodian life. This man had a cigarette delicately lounging through his lips in every frame, as if to say, "It's good." I didn't know this man. I knew one who was a tad more pensive, a tad more aloof, a tad more thoughtful. The man that I knew was looking for the gaps to fill so that none of us would fall through. And if we did, in one swift pull, he'd grab us out with a Herculean gesture and a couch conversation that made us understand what lay beyond the gap. This man wore blousier blouses with more buttons to contain the heart and brain of a man whose hair could not be tamed. This man made sure we had Slurpees and dollar-priced trinkets and fried chicken without a shadow of a doubt that this would be guaranteed to you if you just tried hard enough. Your hunger would be satiated. I became reliant on this man, the one with more buttons than friends. I became fond of him because he knew I would grow up to possess a similar stomach that would become intolerant of hamburgers. But sometimes, just sometimes, or maybe all the times, I wonder if I could ever know the man with blouses and bell-bottoms and cigarettes falling from his mouth. I wonder if he would like me, if we would get along. I think we would.
New York. I miss your mess, your excess, your constant testing my will, my dignity, my ability to take on one more thing. I miss your Mondays and the collective intake of breath as the engine gets going and the pavement gets pounding and the hearts get pumping. The audacity, the belief, the promise of a whole week to achieve your dreams. And I miss your Wednesdays, when the breath is harried and depleted and erratic, when you just don't know how everything can feel too long and too short at the same time. Will you or won't you is the question. Get to the end of the I miss your Fridays. When there's a return of adrenaline, fingers twitching, hands outstretched, inching towards that last thing, that last meeting, that last email until you're out the door and the wind feels stronger against your back, lifting your heels, letting you fly. And doing what you meant to do all week, seeking music or movement or a moment to create a moment that makes the mania worthwhile. I miss your Sundays. Your sweet, sweet Sundays when time is not the object. From the covers to the coffee to the couch and maybe back again. Or out the door, wandering through avenues and numbered streets that each feel like a discovery. And as you move nimbly from continent to continent, the hum of people making music around you and the light giving you clarity about what is actually going on. I miss your mess, your excess, your constant testing my will, my dignity, my ability to take on one more thing. I miss you, New York.
And now I wait to die. When I told my mom that I was gay, she said to me, "And now I wait to die." I was stunned by the directness of the statement. And now I wait to die. But I was also stunned by her truth, unfiltered, unedited, not made lavish by sentiment. And now I wait to die. My heart dropped from my anus into my throat, back into its respective spot, but feeling just a little bit different. And now I wait to die. I've thought lots about statements, expressions, the way people communicate themselves, their hurt, their pain, their instinct, and ultimately their vulnerability. And now I wait to die? And how expression is the bravest act, and at the same time, perhaps the most reckless one, because that impression can last forever. And now I wait to die.
Louisville. Once, I drove a car drunk into Louisville and sat by the river trying to salve my broken heart because I was in love with someone I didn't know. But the allure and the mystery and the depth of not knowing was enough for me to take a risk. Idiot! What a dummy! What a reckless wound. Injurious sensitivity, a boy so afraid to fall in love. But when he played that Brokeback Mountain soundtrack, when he let me kiss him, even if he was unsure of the rest, when he let me paint on his ceiling as we laid on the mattress looking at the stars, when he let me fall so far in that I didn't know a way out, I knew I was in love. But I is not we. And I loved, but we did not. And I learned I wasn't looking for a buddy. I was looking for myself. And now that has made all the difference.
When this is done, I'm going to hug the shit out of you. Okay? Okay. See you then.
Ma. When all of this began, I told my mother to stop going to temple. She said, why? I said, because it's a pandemic. She said, but the monks have to eat. I said, too bad. And this is why I'm going to hell, and she's going to evolve into the most powerful Pokemon creature that ever was. When all of this began, I told my mother that I bought craisins. She said, why? And I said, because it's a pandemic. She said, but why not cans of anything else? I said, but craisins. And this is why I'm going to be buried with unopened bags of craisins, and she's going to feast on her jars of pickled foods for the rest of her life. When all of this began, I told my mother that I was worried about her. She said, why? I said, because it's a pandemic. She said, but I'm better at this than you. And I said, what, at pandemicking? And she said, at surviving. And I said, but you got a head start. And she said, yeah, because genocide. And I said, and this is why I'm never leaving this goddamn apartment and will shelter in place forever. And she, my mother, will absolutely, positively live forever.
Jesus. At 18, I didn't drink. I believed in Jesus pensively, and I secretly shamed everyone, so college was interesting. I was bilingual in sweetness and absolute fear. Sweetness because I so craved that non-committal, non-verb, non-nothing thing to be liked. Absolute fear because me, myself, and Jesus. So I did a lot of smiling, a lot of hiding in Hughes Hall, waiting to transfer to another school where I could also not drink and believe in Jesus pensively and secretly shame everyone else. And then I saw Nick Niven and Tracy Johnson dance. And not just dance, but dance. And I swear that these people must have been the most beautiful people I've ever laid my eyes on. And their rhythms were matching. Their hips were locked in. It was like watching sex upright on your feet. Sex in the air. Sex. And after, I started drinking. I questioned Jesus, and I began the long process of ridding myself of shame. Still working on it.
In the morning. In the morning, a shuffle of toes and weight click-clacks across the wooden floor, desperately desirous of my ascension. In the morning, a shuffle of a heavy panting and breathing searches for a corresponding rhythm so that we can just get the show on the road. In the morning, an eager pair of eyes amid a cloudy mass looks longingly for the lifting of my lids. She sits and waits for attention. I'm up, but I linger longer because I know the minute I'm up, her rhythm will increase twofold and there will be no turning back from getting the show on the road. The shoes, the jacket, the hats, the keys, the bag, the mask, the leash, and the door. Out the door we go. In the morning, I've noticed that I don't notice what day it is anymore. On a regular day, the first flight of city dwellers would have already been off to their destinations. The second flight is on its way out the door, and there's a trickling of in-betweeners who feel less locked into the tops and bottoms of their hours. But now, in the morning, we're all in-betweeners. The tops and bottoms are irrelevant. Nothing was ever that important, as if to say that flights of city dwellers needed to be a thing. When really, now we're all trickling from place to place while others are finding solace and crisis in staying put. In the morning, she begins with a steady pace, a trot that feels like, ah, yes, I remember this well. And as soon as we've crossed Broadway, the scents build like a minefield of remnants of human consumption. Just across Broadway is where it begins, but the rest, into the park, is a trail that Hansel and Gretel have left for owners to begrudge and bemoan the cost of human activity. In the morning, she'll holler at the cabs, her contemporaries, the cats that just won't go away. She'll pull through the front entrance, a little stoned area with the playground to the left, barricaded with no trespassing signs. It's been closed for 2 months. Past the public restrooms and the tables for hookah and chess, and out onto the lawn, slightly sloped with a set of stars in the back, overlooking the George Washington Bridge. In the morning, sometimes we go left, sometimes we go right, sometimes make a complete circle of the run. Sometimes she wants nothing more than to zigzag from tree to tree, looking for lowly creatures to dominate. There are fewer contemporaries to encounter. There are fewer owners to make small talk with. And there are fewer dots moving from point to point. But in the morning, when the light hits just right, the grass has never been greener. The sky has never been bluer. The smell has never been so fresh. In the morning.
Cambodian. When I tell people that I'm Cambodian, their eyes begin to well as they clutch their hearts as if to say, oh, I'm so sorry. And sometimes I feel, even if I know I shouldn't, but perhaps I should, meet them halfway at the heart clutch with a knowing, I know, genocide. It's like that feeling when a late night commercial rolls on and catches your attention, and stock footage of dirty children squatting and running around war sites or refugee camps is set to nondescript instrumental music, and your heart tugs. For not a single nameless child, but the meeting of the elements of theatricality that says this video is sad and that these kids are sad and we should be sad for the sad. I should meet them at that heart clutch and say, I'm sorry too. But honestly, truly, madly, deeply, gosh, I'm not. Because to be Cambodian is to survive and thrive and arrive at the intersection of your history, your present and future, and at all times, all at once. And honestly, isn't that just being human? Maybe there was a blip blop, a moment that tried to erase the past, the present, and that future. And that blip blop locked us into that grainy, sad genocide video. But before that blip blop were thousands of years of building empires and reaching to the heavens in search of divinity. The proof is in the constellation of monuments that couldn't be torn down. And after the blip blop are decades of restoration, determination, and emancipation. From the killing fields, after that blip blop is me, a child of survival. So yeah, no heart clutch, no sad music for the sad. I'm not really sorry. I'm Cambodian, bitch.
Lifted. When the veil is lifted and the lights go on and the people scatter about again, what will we have learned? Will we once again throw our excess into the streets and our gases into the skies and return to eager consumption that centers self before safety, pleasure before principle as the numbers go up, in heat and water, and the gross misuse of elements that will push us past the point of no return? Will we once again dismiss that the foundation of this nation is predicated on submission and extinction, on relegation and segregation, on the absolute terrorism of Black and brown bodies, hearts, and minds whose survival is dependent upon this moment after? Will we once again prioritize profit over people, over lives, over families, over communities, over the right thing versus not the right thing, but the self thing, the thing that we say, we mistakenly say, that success is the same as soul? When the veil is lifted and the lights go on and the people scatter about again, what will we have learned? What will we do? Who will we be?
I think I'm scared.
Rageful. The first time I ever got white hot rageful was when a woman chased my mother outside a Walmart and asked her why she didn't understand the difference between an express lane and a regular lane, as if the things we do in America make any fucking sense. Don't you understand English? She yelled. And then my mother yelled back, "You fight like a dog."
Hong Kong. You're not from Texas. You're from Hong Kong. He laughed again. He could barely contain it. He found it so funny that someone could make such a funny joke about someone not being from Texas, but rather from Hong Kong. His face turned red. He couldn't stop laughing. He surely thought I would find it funny too, but surprise, I didn't. I just wanted to drink, or to bathe in while this man laughed at himself. He rumbled on for a bit, and my favorite friend, who had witnessed the funniest joke of all time, sprinted down the bar because he was horrified, but couldn't contain the absurdity of the situation and didn't want to be complicit in the audience of this man's funniest joke of all time. I stood there and half smiled, as prey does when they don't desire to be eaten whole, and I said in a sheepish, survivalist kind of way, "Oh no, I'm actually from Texas." As if this were a normal thing to say. A man who thought he was the funniest joke teller of all. His laugh subsided. He handed me back my Texas ID. His face softened. His funny face transformed into more of an earnest, soft glow. And he said to me, without my favorite friend returning to my side, or without me being able to pivot from not wanting to be devoured whole, in his earnest, soft glow, he said, "Oh, I'm just a big guy who likes to make jokes. But really, God bless you for coming to this country and getting a good education." When this is done, I'm gonna hug the shit out of you, okay? Okay. See you then.
I'm sorry. To the people who've told me to stop apologizing my entire life, fuck you! I'm gonna apologize if I fucking want to, because honestly, I wish more people did. Here's a list of people who I think should apologize. Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, especially Bill Clinton, to Monica Lewinsky and Hillary Rodham, and to the United States in 2016, the United States of America, before, during, and probably after. White people, non-white people who are still trying to be white. Scarlett Johansson for trying to be Asian and calling Asian people trees. The person who invented Comic Sans. The person who invented smartphones. The person who invented car horns, or rather the people who use car horns incessantly to express their frustration when the traffic hasn't changed. But like, you drive in New York City, so could you just fucking chill? Drunk drivers, racists, rapists, murderers, dictators, corporations, banks, and police officers. The girl who told me that I was the most attractive Asian person she ever knew. The teacher who asked me if there was a language barrier when we were speaking English to each other. The guy who called us fags when we were walking down the street. And so many more a-holes. Those people should apologize. So if you're worried about my apology, this is what I say to you. On behalf of all those not sorry a-holes, I'm really fucking sorry.
The second time I ever got white hot rageful was when my neighbor's dog ran away. And my neighbor's white AF dad asked me if my family knew where it was. Because don't Chinese people eat dogs? As if your lack of responsibility wasn't the reason your stupid, ugly AF dog didn't run away from your racist, gaping, hairy asshole. I shook my head because at that point I still didn't have my own version of you fight like a dog. Maybe you eat your own dog, bitch.
I think I'm scared.
The third time I ever got white hot rageful was when a boy in my junior English class said that it was unfair that someone like me got to go to college for free, as if his bullshit mediocre test scores and lack of ambition, talent, smarts, or personality weren't the reasons he wasn't going to get into Harvard, and my manic resume stacked with lines that read quiet president, speech and forensics champion, National Honor Society member, most involved, most talented, most likely to win an Oscar, didn't tell the tale of a kid who knew his test scores weren't enough, but worked until the candle burned out or the energy drink can was empty because he knew innate skill or talent wasn't ever going to get himself into Harvard, but lines on a resume and actual nerve would. So, you too, you fight like a dog. You eat your own dog, bitch, and eat my student loans while you're at it. The 178th time I ever got white hot rageful was when a gay boy, and then another, and another, veered his attention away when I approached, when I extended a hand out as if to simply say, hello, and that misdirection followed by a sheepish shrug was concluded in a, sorry man, not really into, as if I wasn't a human person with extraordinary sensitivity and a propensity to doubt what was living for anyways if people don't recognize your humanity. So, you know, you too, you fight like a dog. You eat your own dog, bitch, and eat my student loans while you're at it, you gay white monster dog, bitch. I'm still working on my retort.
Two aunts. This week, my two aunts passed away, thousands of miles from the other, both my mother's sisters. One, the first, the eldest of 10, and the second, still as old as sin. Number two, The second, I did not know Lang. She was the aunt who stayed behind, or was left behind, or remained behind back in Pre Prasap, my mother's hometown. When I visited Cambodia for the very first time, we drove out there on our way back from temples, through dusty roads, into the most remote area we'd traversed. We were surprised, or maybe I was surprised, to find that the government had a greater hand in a place that felt so sleepy and tucked away. So-and-so was the bodyguard of so-and-so in the government, and that's why so-and-so had a mansion on the hill built from the finest wood, built with the government's riches, built with an aim to impress. But across the street, in the stilted house of my imagination, much different than the hollow, cavernous house of so-and-so, my Om Lang sat on a gutale with her daughter by her side, one tooth protruding out from the middle, a face that was spotted, weathered, and worn. My Om Lang had not been diagnosed, but it was clear that she had dementia. But she only had to be told once that her baby sister was here, and perhaps a sparkle returned, perhaps for a moment, as she clutched onto my mother's forearm, as any good Cambodian is wont to do, with a hand firmly wrapped around her. Perhaps for a moment, she knew exactly where she was. Her sister was here, her sister from America, and her sister with two boys who were handsome and grown, and how it all felt perfect to be together for a moment. My mother beamed, even if controlled, her eyes welling with nostalgia, perhaps possibility, a wistfulness for the notion that her childhood was not forgotten or for forgetting or forsaken, that she was a daughter of Cambodia once, and still, and her sister was clutching her closely as if to say, still. And then my mother called me to tell me that Aunt Kim had died too. Number one, the first. Kim wasn't an Om or an aunt. She was just Kim. Madonna status. Cher status. Cambodia status. Kim was the eldest of 10 and definitely oldest sin. And she herself lived in cooler temperatures than Lang in Canada, close to her daughter, who was closer to my mother's age. The daughter and my mother were much more like contemporaries, and Kim sat elevated above as a beloved matriarch, holding the whole thing together. She was the eldest. What did any of us expect? Kim had made a guest appearance all throughout my life. At one point, she stayed during Christmas and New Year's, and Valentine's, and St. Patrick's Day, and 4th of July, and probably Thanksgiving and Christmas round again. But we didn't mind, because she sat on her couch with a blanket tied tightly around her, and probably a knit cap on her head. And when we sat near her, she placed her hand on ours and smiled, and that was it. There wasn't much to it. There wasn't the burden of expectation. There wasn't the recalling of past inaction. There was only presence, a hand on a hand, and a great warmth that she was grateful that you were here. This week, my two aunts passed away, thousands of miles from the other, both my mother's sisters. One, the first, the eldest of 10, and the second, still as old as sin. When the first, or rather the second, passed, my mother texted me and ended it by letting me know she loved me. I raced to video chat her, to see her eyes well, to see if I could be of comfort, to see what I could do. But she looked at me calmly and said, "It's okay. I didn't know Lang well. I've forgotten so much. But I'm worried about Kim. She hasn't been eating." And so, when the second, or rather the first, passed, my mother called me, and I could feel the crack in her voice, the injury in her intonation. Her beloved sister had passed, just as she was trying to look past the first that had passed, or rather the second that had passed. And she said in an uncensored sob, "Losing two sisters in 1 week?" And I could not contain the timbre of my voice or the cracks in my control. All I could say was, "I'm sorry, Ma. I love you." This week, my two aunts passed away.
When the veil is lifted and the lights go on and the people scatter about again, what will we have learned? What will we do? Who will we be?
I think I'm scared.
I think I'm scared of white people, of their luminous skin that they can change at a whim to bubblegum pink if they're lazy, to gold if they're lucky, to yellow if it's funny, to brown if it's also funny, to black if they're exfoliated for Instagram, of their eyes that have the uncanny ability to see whatever they desire to believe, and even more so, envisage a reality that is predicated on striving, not surviving, ambition, not intuition, for the good, not for the lost, buckled under the heel of a country that shames vulnerability, of their generous mouths that feed on food, poisonous foods, organic foods, grass-fed foods, the option of foods as they get stronger, more steadfast, more able to philosophize and amplify think pieces and fake news and weaponize facts, information, statistics to tell you why it's this way or that. Of their hands, large hands, capable hands, strong hands that are rooted more in the brain than in the heart. Hands that can wrestle, can swipe, can drag their doggies about as their generous mouths try to synchronize with their emboldened hands, but the rhythms never catch up until their hands render you speechless, breathless, without a warning that these hands can be the end of everything. I think I'm scared of white people, of their hearts that can be injured as easily as ours, but their blows are felt by all of us and not the other way around. Why ours are meant for justification, for reasoning, for sacrifice. I think I'm scared of white people, of their ability to do, to say, to be everything to us, or nothing at all.
What does it feel like? What does it feel like to be so powerful that you can stand on a man's neck for 9 minutes and watch his life exhale through his body and walk away again? What does it feel like to be so powerful that you can enter without identifying your right to end a woman's life by the injury of indiscriminate bullets and, yes, walk away again? What does it feel like to be so powerful that you can follow a man, entrap him in your imagination and your captivity, and kill him, while simultaneously passing on this power to its inheritors and absolutely walk away again? Those of us who have spent our lives in submission know exactly where we stand in proximity to that power, in the orbit of its inscrutable power in this ecosystem that is made essential by the survival of whiteness and the genocide of everything else. At times, we've come closer to its elusive call to assimilate, or to fall in line, or for the upkeep of society, but more often than not, most times, in fact, forced into corners, held hostage in a conversation of civility and the rights of those who possess the power and have no intention of relinquishing it, because if they did, what would even happen? But the truth is, I am alive. And Ahmaud Arbery is not. And Breonna Taylor is not. And George Floyd is not. And Sandra Bland is not. And Tatiana Jefferson is not. And Tony McDade is not. And Trayvon Martin is not. And Alton Sterling is not. And Philando Castile is not, and Mike Brown is not, and Eric Garner is not, and Tamir Rice is not, and Freddie Gray is not, and so many more of our countless Black brothers and sisters and genderqueer family. What does it feel like to be so powerful that you can watch Black lives disappear before your very eyes and still walk away again? And what would it feel like if that power was relinquished? Maybe peace.
What will we have learned?
What will we do?
Who will we be?
I've got something that I really want to say. Sometimes things just won't go your way. But don't you worry when the sky turns gray. Tomorrow is another day. Life is bound to have ups and downs. For every smile, there will be a frown. But you'll get through it, come what may. Tomorrow is another day. Everyone has problems, you need a little help. You don't have to go through it all by yourself. If you're feeling alone, pick up the phone. When push comes to shove, talk to someone you love. Happiness is the key to success. Too much stress is gonna leave you depressed. Don't forget to make some time for play. Tomorrow is another day. Just remember to love somebody, laugh with somebody, give to somebody, live for somebody, love somebody, laugh with somebody, live for somebody, give to somebody. If at first you don't succeed, you probably made some mistakes. Life gives you lemons, go and make a lemon cake. Don't you worry, everything's gonna be okay. Tomorrow is another day. Gotta work for what you want, nothing comes automatic. You'll get out what you put in, no such thing as magic. In the end, it's all worth it. Practice makes perfect. Put love in what you do, good things will come to you. I've got something that I really want to say. Sometimes things just won't go your way. But don't you worry when the sky turns gray. Tomorrow is another day. Life is bound to have ups and downs. For every smile, there will be a frown. But you'll get through it, come what may. Tomorrow is another day.